Good day, and thank you for joining us. My name is Owen Robinson, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience Strategy here for Waterfield Tech, and I'm privileged to be your host today for this session of Breaking the Barriers to CX Transformation. For almost 40 years, Waterfield Tech has been anything and everything customer experience and AI automation for the world's most innovative companies. We are thrilled to host this webinar for you as part of our CX Thought Leadership Series. Be sure to register for our next webinar in this series on June 1st called Optimizing Your CX in a Zero Budget Year, hosted by my friend and colleague, Chanley Geveshausen, Vice President of CX Consulting at Waterfield Tech. If you have any questions as we get rolling here, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them as we get to the end of the session. As we introduce our panelists, I'd like to get a little bit of feedback from our audience members. So for all of you listening live, where are you in your cloud migration journey? Please choose the answer as we go ahead and introduce our panel. I'm joined today by some industry heavyweights from three companies that have redefined the boundaries of what's possible. Our first panelist is Matt McGinnis, the Vice President of Marketing from Five9. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and Five9.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Five9 about 60 days, so still drinking from the fire hose, but I have a long history in the cloud and contact center space. Prior to Five9, it was the Vice President of Product Marketing at 8x8, where I had a chance to work with the esteemed Mr. Tim Richter as well. So we know each other from that time, as well as the head of marketing at RingCentral. And so have worked actually with the RingCentral in contact center, 8x8 virtual contact center, and of course now with Five9. So before that was actually an on-premise. So really understand the journey from on-prem to cloud, the different technologies and the solution suites across the product. So happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Matt, and thank you for attending today. Our second panelist is Charlie Godfrey, Senior Director of Experience Innovation. Got to get that right, from Genesys. Charlie?
Hey, thanks, Owen. Hello, everyone. Like Owen said, my name is Charlie Godfrey, Senior Director of Experience Innovation. And I've been with Genesys for just about a dozen years. Prior to that, I was actually led a contact center technology team as a service owner, working with various technologies, like Matt said, on-prem, Cisco, Avaya, and Genesys. But my main passion has always been, and as evidenced by my title, around how we take technology and apply it to improve experiences, address business challenges, and drive business outcomes. So that's what I do at Genesys. To help customers find those opportunities to improve and drive successful outcomes and experiences. Great to be here with everyone.
Thank you, Charlie. And our third panelist, the aforementioned Tim Richter, Director of Product Marketing for Twilio. Tim, tell us about that parrot.
Great. Thanks, Owen. It's great to be here. So so I'm Director of Product Marketing supporting Twilio Flex. I've been at Twilio for about 4 years now. But I've been in the contact center space for about 20 years. I joined Avaya initially in 2003 at this point. And so for the past 20 years, really 16 of it was focused on product management. So I product managed a number of elements and components within the contact center suite, including the self-service, voice portal, workforce optimization, as well as a number of maintenance offer management suites within the kind of UC and NCC space. So I've had experience in the premise-based realm with Avaya. I had the opportunity and the pleasure of working for Matt at 8x8, supporting their virtual contact center product. And now for the past 4 years, focused on the Twilio Flex cloud contact center platform. So pleased to be here.
Thank you, Tim. And boy, as I said, a lot of experience on this panel. So let's take a look at our poll results if we could. They tabulate. Do you feel like we need the Jeopardy thing? Look at that. Well, that is fascinating. So what do you guys think? Any surprises there with those results?
Yeah, I guess maybe a quick comment is, very nice to see a very cloud forward audience here. Mm-hmm. People are already embracing. So I have a feeling that we'll be able to go into some next generation topics on where cloud is evolving and the technology is moving. But and for those that are really thinking about it, there's going to be a lot of very rich information that I know we've gone through with all of us. So yeah, looking forward to it. Great results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think reflects what we've all seen is that we are in the mainstream of cloud adoption for certain. So Before we get to the barriers of CX transformation that businesses face, I'd like to spend just a couple minutes kind of talking about the trends that we're all seeing in customer experience, because I think it's important to think about the drivers for why CX transformations are necessary and why those reasons kind of shift as time moves on. So one of the continuing reverberations we see from the pandemic is the acceleration of digital transformation, and certainly, especially in the last year or so, the advent of meaningful generative AI. Has only accelerated that digital transformation conversation even more. Matt, let's start with you. Where are companies in their digital transformation journey?
Yeah, well, there's some really awesome trends that are happening. We've really moved from voice to heavier messaging, chat, and email usage, so textual forms of communication. And what's nice about that is that, this omni-channel and being able to support multi-channel, omni-channel, really engage customers to where they want to engage. Especially when you start to look at the generational shift. So Gen X, Boomer, a little bit still to voice, but when you get into Gen Y, Gen Z, it's very messaging centric. And so when you start to get into this realm of the digital textual channels, of course, generative AI now becomes this whole new game changer for how can we really automate, how can we add intelligence, how can we add AI to really up-level the CX experience overall. And so very exciting area to talk about today.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and I totally agree, Matt. And one of the things that's interesting, what we find, and what we talk about a lot is technology doesn't necessarily equate to transformation. So like you mentioned, the transfer from voice to digital, we did some research that actually found, yes, there is that, but satisfaction in those channels have actually gone down in every channel but voice. And what that tells me is that, and what we've seen is, like you said, Matt, the importance of a contextual connected experience, right, across an omni-channel experience is really important to this transformation. Our research showed that we found only 13% of the companies that we surveyed actually felt that they had a fully connected experience. So when we think about technology, technology does enable transformation. I will say that, and the generative AI and the new technology there, like Owen, you said, just say something like ChatGPT and the interest rate goes through the roof for a good reason, right? So we're looking at ways that we can use this technology to summarize large amounts of information, to be able to transform that and generate suggestions, both to enable customers and employees. So the transformation is there, and I think we're always on the lookout for how we can actually leverage this technology to drive outcomes. So it's very exciting times and changing every day, as we know.
Boy, it sure is. And I'll say if 13% of respondents say they have a fully connected experience, then 90% of those are wrong, because I'm a consumer and I don't see a lot of it. So Tim, what do you think?
Well, I wanted to key off something, Charlie, that you had mentioned, is that, with the proliferation of digital channels and digital engagement methods, customer satisfaction has not always been there and has not always been met. And I think that there's a great promise of personalization, but the challenge is that delivering on that promise of personalization across more than just voice channels, but in all the digital engagement, whether it's SMS or WhatsApp or even email, becomes challenging if you lack the complete picture and lack the complete context. So we see that as a challenge that we work through with customers and helping them understand what are the best ways to deploy new digital channels and new methods of giving customers windows of access into your company, while preserving the personalization that's really needed at the end of the day and critical for their strategy of using customer engagement to drive growth. And that's the other big driver that we routinely hear from our customers, that they're looking kind of just to pivot their focus and perspective of customer experience as really a necessary cost of doing business to one in which it can really move the needle on top line revenue and growth, and making it super easy to engage with zero friction has great potential, but it needs to be delivered with the same degree of personalization to have that impact.
Right. And I think going back to the earlier commentary about how so many in their digital transformation journey, they've developed those digital channels or those IVAs, but frankly, they're just not that good. They're not having the success with them that they had hoped they would. So getting back into that digital transformation and reinvesting and doing it well, we're seeing a lot of that nowadays. I've also heard that a lot of those, a lot of the macro societal trends we see that are driving the customer and employee expectations. I was at an event in Denver last week and heard it said that you cannot have a customer experience strategy without an employee experience strategy. What does that really mean, though, in terms of workforce engagement and optimization and stuff like that? Charlie, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I love that, Owen. And, I've heard happy employees make happy customers, right? And so us as technologists and, it's people that solve challenges, that feels really fuzzy, right? And as business leaders, it's like, I don't see the money there. I love the research. I read some research from Accenture that said employers who found themselves in a great employee experience, they actually outperformed the S&P by 122%. So it's not just about feeling good and everybody being happy. There's real business sense in doing this. And one of the challenges that we found, the survey that we did, 30 and 40% of organizations are really struggling to keep the staff trained and to keep them engaged as things change. So I think being able to incorporate coaching, feedback, training into a unified plan is so important to give people the right skills to be able to address, customer requests and inquiries. And then we go back to AI and technology. One of the things we found, and I'm sure people are familiar with gamification, they see, great opportunities in gamification, and we see that too. But it's not just about engagement; it also is real business sense. We had a customer that implemented gamification and saw tremendous increases in revenue streams. So 300% increase in the total revenue and 55% increase in revenue per call. And so just by measuring and just by bringing people together, especially in this disparate, remote workforce, to be part of a collective friendly competition yields some really incredible business results. So it's not just about employees being happy, but also that, engagement, coaching, and involvement, connectivity.
Right. Yeah, Charlie, I love that metric that you delivered, which is a revenue metric. And that's telling, because I think that 5 years ago we weren't necessarily talking about revenue as a metric here, and I think employee productivity and satisfaction is critical, as you say, to at the end of the day care for attrition, which has always been a problem. I guess the one additive comment that I'd apply, an observation, is that sort of the definition of the workforce in the context of the contact center, we've observed it to expand. And whereas maybe 6 years ago, in the context of a contact center, the workforce here that we're talking about are largely agents, fielding, post call or post sale type of support issues. Now we're seeing, extension of the technology to many different customer facing functions throughout an organization. It could be financial coaches, realtors, even retail associates, for whom, fielding inquiries or doing outbound customer engagement may not be the full-time gig that they're focused on. So we sort of see the traditional walls of the contact center falling down, which presents new challenges, as in the form of engagement, scheduling. I mean, we're no longer just looking at kind of moving from Excel spreadsheets to a more advanced workforce management solution, because you've got a distributed set of teams who are engaging with customers. So the new imperative really becomes understanding with granularity what types of inquiries are coming into the organization, what can be automated, and where do you need to double down on staff, perhaps outside the traditional realm of the agents, to ensure that you're addressing the needs of the customers.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, the employee experience has become very important, right? I think we used to think about WFO and optimization. It's a bit more machine oriented, and let's optimize and squeeze out the efficiency but that didn't take the human element into account, right? And so now we really evolved from WFO to WEM, right? And WEM really is focusing on what does the employee, the agent that has a really tough job to do. 90% of the calls that they're receiving or the engagements they're receiving, they're dealing with an issue or problem, right? And it's something to where, the agent needs to be empowered to solve that and solve that in an efficient, effective way. And so by giving them the tools, giving them sort of automation augmentation, giving them AI insights, AI empowered ways to better actually solve that issue or problem from the customer, that's the real key. And so as you empower the agent and they become superpowered, at that point, they can give a better experience to the customer. And so when the agent is happier, I do believe the customer is happier. And as we start to squeeze productivity, efficiency with real insight into, how employees can engage in this way by improving their experience, it's one of the biggest game changers from a cloud perspective. And we're only starting to see this trend grow more and more important. So I believe it's a competitive differentiator when you're in the market running a contact center to have the best agents and have the best NPS scores in the end.
Absolutely. And I think, with the comments from the three of you, it's when we talk about digital transformation and workforce engagement in the employee experience, it's really very much the same conversation in that we're trying to build personalized, meaningful interactions at scale, irrespective of channel. And as we do that, and I think you said it well, whereas we treat the customer engagement workforce as a single entity through your virtual, digital, and human agents, your human agents specifically then are moved to much more complex and meaningful conversations with customers where you need to invest in those humans to make sure they can give the experience that you want them to deliver. So it's really, really, really key. So thank you for that. And, I think that's fascinating stuff. And I think we could talk about trends all day, but we're here to talk about barriers. So let's get into the meat of our discussion without losing sight of where our industry is headed. And as we get there, I'm going to go ahead and put up a second poll for our attendees, and really thinking about what's holding you back from going to cloud. And I say this knowing from the earlier poll that all of you are already on your cloud journey. But I think this is where, for those of us who've been here a while, and I think our panelists would agree, I started getting heavily involved in the CX cloud infrastructure probably in the 2013 era, sometime like that. And I think I did my last actual net new premise deployment in about 2016, early 2017, maybe. So it's been a while, even though we have a number of premise customers still. But it's fascinating how that conversation has changed. In the early days of CX Cloud, it was much more about, can it scale? Is it as feature rich? Is it secure? Those kinds of things, right? Sometime in probably the late 2019, 2020, 2021 era, we crossed that Rubicon. And the CX cloud platforms that especially all of you work for can do so much more than premise platforms can do. Yes, we have passed feature parity. There are things like AI and generative AI and large language models and those things that we cannot deliver realistically in a premise environment anymore. So when we talk about CX transformation, it's underpinned by the cloud technologies that facilitate that transformation. So thinking as we go through that, but I'll get off my high horse for a minute, and hopefully we've had some time to put our answers in, and let's take a look at these poll results real quick. Kind of a spread out results there. So holding back, interesting cost. I think that's a big one that a lot of people see, and I think really reflective of the economy we're in. Certainly, of course, cost is always an issue, but more so in this kind of era. And then the complexity. That's fascinating as well, because again from a cloud persona, the mantra is it's easier. And I think those of us who actually work in cloud, not always, because it can do so much more. So it's not necessarily easier, but it's a different kind of work. So any other comments on the results? I think those are fascinating.
Yeah. I think the complexity, well, go ahead, Tim, please.
I was going to say, yeah, I think the cost element is reflecting sort of the near term macroeconomic headwinds that we're all facing, and we are seeing some lengthening of refresh cycles in the order of 6 to 12 months, reflective of a cautious approach folks are taking to given budget constraints to modernize. But I do acknowledge, that from the earlier poll, this is very much of a cloud forward audience. So I think, Owen, to your earlier point, the benefits and the value props of cloud-based solutions are well recognized. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Right.
Yeah. And the comments I was going to add is I think complexity really is sort of new. What's new, what's different, a bit of a learning curve that comes along with kind of a feeling or perception of complexity. But I do think that, being, in the past in on-prem and now in cloud, I think once you get down the learning curve, it's actually a quick learning curve in how you're implementing, how you're utilizing new technologies. And I think from the cost perspective, we've really evolved to where cloud in the beginning had a lot of positioning and messaging around cost optimization, and that became an initial draw to cloud. But I think as we've really evolved and grown the cloud platform, what's happening is we just have so much more richness and feature set, productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, in addition to new skills, capabilities, AI that we've talked about. And what's happened is I think the value proposition has expanded tremendously as a result. And because of that, people actually start out in a TCO lane. And what they start to see is the productivity and efficiency gains become why they further invest, and then actually, frankly, tend to spend more as a result. And it makes for a better customer experience.
Yeah, and the one that I totally agree with everything you guys said. The technical expertise was a little interesting for me to see too, because I do think that a lot of the problems and a lot of the challenges from a technology perspective that we would have seen on the prem solution have kind of been figured out in a cloud package. So that does help. There's still a lot when it comes to integration, but finding the right partner to help you get over that hurdle. What I find is the conversations change quickly, like Matt was saying, from technical solutions to business solutions. And so now the resources that were there before can look at things a little differently. So I think there's opportunity there. And I do think that, like we alluded to, that cloud does offer some fast paths to fast innovations, because a lot of those challenges have already been figured out for the masses as part of the subscription and platform.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and as a reminder to our audience, if you have questions or want to make a comment, please put it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions as we get towards the end. But I think what the poll results are really showing us is that we know, and as a cloud forward audience, that transforming and modernizing our customer experience is essential to our business success. But it is a real challenge, and there are significant concerns that we need to, or one might say barriers that we need to overcome. So when things aren't working well, what does that look like? What are the bottlenecks? What are the impacts on the team, the departments, the lines of business, the customer experience? Kind of what does all that look like? Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, well, so I'll start with just observations that we've had working with customers in this scenario. And the first very common one and barrier is kind of wasted agent time and agent productivity that is spent navigating multiple open tabs, multiple windows that ultimately adds time. It adds time and complexity, and damages, customer satisfaction. So this is, a product of staying on a kind of a legacy technology that doesn't give them the flexibility, to move quickly to the cloud, and also just the inability to execute on specific innovative use cases. And we realize that for many customers who are running premise-based solution, these need to be depreciated, and companies need to preserve investments. And CFOs of a lot of these organizations are not ready to rip and replace. It's just not feasible. So therefore, the conversation very often moves to an augmentation approach. So given that, if a barrier is we cannot rip and replace because we haven't fully depreciated this asset, then the next step becomes, well, how can we begin to modernize, starting with one team, perhaps one channel, maybe even one workflow, for example, managing returns of a retailer. That becomes, a kind of the way around how we navigate, having to confront the reality of we can't just rip and replace overnight, but we need to begin to modernize and differentiate if we're going to stay relevant.
Yeah, I love that, Tim. And that would be a barrier that I would look at too, is that oftentimes we look at this as, all right, and Owen, you mentioned feature parity. And oftentimes we fall into this trap of like for like. Hey, we need to replicate
like for like
what we had before into this new thing. And for me, that's an opportunity. So when the folks on the bridge called out the cost factor, where I see a barrier is in the vision of the new world and clearly understanding the problems that we're trying to solve. So not looking at it from a feature, I need to do X, Y, Z, but rather let's look at the problem and look at the experience that we're trying to optimize. And so a couple of ways that we can take this on. And Tim, I really like the fact you find a target group, you take your first step and you launch from there. But what journey should you launch? So through data, things like journey visualization and analytics to clearly understand across your experiences, what are the points of friction? What are the paths to success that mean real business value? And being able to prioritize to say, okay, we need to re-engineer this experience because it makes the most business sense. Mm-hmm. And then the other barrier is just getting everybody at the table to agree the direction. And so in that, what I share with the customers I work with is it doesn't matter if we have a digital group and a contact center group and all this. Really, the one truth across all of this is the experience. Mm-hmm. Me as a customer dealing with a company, I don't know Tom or Sally in these different organizations. All I know is I'm reaching out through whatever channel. And so to unify the people around this journey, understand, design thinking aspects to come out with the as is and the to be state is a way that we can supercharge this move to the cloud and really focus on the business value that's going to more than offset the cost.
Yep. And I'm going to add to what Charlie said. I mean, a well-running contact center is a finely tuned machine, right? And it really has to start with design and the tool sets for how you build the design of the customer experience and how you architect the systems, thinking through what are the functions, where and how do you scale at certain points, especially if you're in more of a seasonal or holiday, oriented business. The types of channels and at what times those channels are being most utilized. You kind of find that evening, weekend, that's a little bit more messaging oriented versus during the business hours, it's going to be more voice centric. And so you really have to design and build that in. But then as you're dealing with kind of the flow of customer engagement and how agents are empowered to really deal with that and have the proper tool sets in this finely tuned machine to really drive to the end result. And I think the other key thing with any finely tuned contact center is it's flexible because there are a lot of incoming inquiries and you don't know what you're going to get. And so, it could be something as simple as a technical support or billing issue, but it can be really anything else under the sun. And so designing for the flexibility, but optimizing to make sure that flow gets to a positive result is just absolutely key. So I think I love the words, the design, the tool sets, how you automate, you augment, how you make it intelligent. All of that has to come together to really deliver an awesome CX experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you really nailed it in that as the tool sets have gotten so sophisticated and so fantastic, we often overlook the design or we try to shortcut it, but really thinking through that design that will pay dividends for quite some time. You're absolutely right. And I think we saw from our poll results, cost. I'll come back to that cost concern. And I think it's, again, we talked about the larger forces in our economy. We're teetering on a recession or in a recession or about to be in a recession or coming out of a recession. We're somewhere right there, depending on which economist you talk to today. Certainly in an age of inflation, money is expensive right now. We have to prioritize. Our customers have to prioritize. Businesses have to prioritize. Why should companies prioritize CX transformation during these tight economic times when they have so many other things they have to worry about? Charlie, why?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to what the platforms enable and the features that make that happen. But a factoid that I read that I think is behind everything, retention. So there was a research done where 77% of customers will leave after up to 5 negative interactions with a company. Now, that doesn't mean 5 calls, and it doesn't mean 5 whatever. It means I go to the website and I can't find what I want. I can't get help. And so I'm forced to change channels, and I call and I get an IVR, and then I get to an agent who doesn't know the answer, and I'm at 5 and I'm out. And so I believe, right, no business will survive without retaining their customers, acquiring new ones. And so that's where the flip of why these features are so important, why speed to innovation is important, to be able to get this unified and get these experiences orchestrated. Some of the benefits that we've researched with with CX leaders, access to data across all the channels, unifying that and reducing the operational workload associated with it. The ability to get new features faster, reducing IT cycles and research and integration, right? And then increase cybersecurity and the fact that I don't have to do a lot of the penetration testing and things I was doing before because it's handled as part of the certifications and on the platform. So those things, utilizing the resources differently, and even from a fact of making these resources, maybe not repurposing is too strong a word, but I think as a former service owner in the contact centers, some of my developers would say, Charlie, it's not the demand, it's the death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's the keep the lights on changes that I just getting hit with. I can't think strategically. So now if that noise is reduced and served somewhere else, these resources can now focus on really driving innovation, not so much from a capability, but how we apply those capabilities to the business challenges. That's where really the benefits come from, is when we really apply it to the business.
Yeah, and I think maybe what I would add to the conversation is competitive advantage, right? So as markets are evolving and changing and adopting new technology with new tool sets, starting to use AI, and the other thing that I don't think we've touched on is reporting and intelligence, really analytics that you gain from this finely tuned contact center machine. And I think as you really start to get into the data and you're improving the design, you're adding new capabilities so the agent is happier, the customer is able to be more empowered through that CX experience. What's happening is these companies that are embracing that are gaining an advantage. And so as they gain an advantage, the folks that aren't moving forward, frankly, aren't able to deliver the same level of customer satisfaction. And like Charlie just said, as you start to get into multiple interactions and up to 5, you start to see that attrition or customer migration away to competitors. And so I'd say that competitive advantage is really, really key. And we're seeing, at 5.9 in the data, that people that really embrace cloud start to use a lot of these new technologies, use what we call fluid experiences, which is the digital engagement across multiple channels, and have that insights and intelligence. They just have a great command and control to really win in the market space. And so that's the key word I would say is the competitive advantage piece is why you want to stay on. Maybe I'll also add flexibility. COVID was, while we live in a post-COVID world, we still have a lot of, swan events that can occur, and having that flexibility to be able to engage in multiple ways. So whether or not it's remote agents, or office-oriented agents, and really empowering the organization to really continue to deliver that CX experience no matter what the situation. That is also very key and something else that cloud offers an advantage as well.
Right.
Yeah, and just a key on that concept of flexibility. I mean, we're in an environment now where every company needs to drive top line revenue. And at the same time, every company needs to drive costs and ensure there's productivity. And what we kind of routinely see is companies viewing their customer engagement strategy as something that can move the needle on top line revenue. We've seen large shoe retailers drive commerce online through the mobile app and see sales conversions go way up. We've seen electronics retailers kind of pivot away from brick and mortar reliance on people going into stores and opening up new digital channels for like digital like video demo stations, for example, and online sales to drive and move the needle on top line revenue. And you simply need the flexibility to be able to execute on your specific way to take friction out of engagement to drive that top line revenue. And on the other side, the cost side and productivity, as we've been saying, the flexibility allows you to be creative in the sort of makeup of the user interface, for example, you expose to users, or to collapse the number of applications and screens that they have to navigate to drive productivity and drive satisfaction at the end of the day. So it's really that combination of driving revenue through taking friction out of engagement and driving productivity by having the flexibility to make sure that employee workflows are as smooth as possible and are served up with the right tools that they have.
Yeah. And thanks. And what I hear from all of you is that as the reason CX transformation should float to the top of that priority list is because it really does drive real business outcomes, real things. And I think, as we as business owners and business stakeholders make decisions about where we're going to invest, our customers are doing the same thing. And to your point, Charlie, if it's, up to 5 bad interactions causes a customer to leave, I think the key to that is up to. Sometimes it's just 1. And sometimes, the old yarn, you have a relationship with your customer and trust is built over years and lost in a minute. So it's really important that you invest in that CX transformation because your customers are gonna be the future. So anyway, I'm gonna get off on a tangent here. So before I do, let's think about, is now really the right time though? I mean, everything has benefits and costs and risks and things we have to work with, but there are things we have to do and things we should do. Where does CX transformation fit? Matt, or Tim, let's start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think that to some extent, we're preaching to the choir here, given the cloud forward nature of this audience. But it really lends towards the lack of motion towards digital transformation risks irrelevance. And as competitors, and kind of what Matt was saying earlier, if you want to differentiate your solution based on customer experience, which is what companies are doing now more than ever. It's doing so and leveraging the flexible, extensible tools that you have to take friction out of engagement and use CX as that strategic driver of growth. Because if you're not doing it, your competitors likely are, and you need to stay ahead of the game and really carve out your unique differentiation strategy. And CX is the perfect way to really anchor your differentiation and how you can win.
No doubt.
Yeah. And what I'll add is that, we're not in the early stages of cloud contact center anymore. We're sort of in a growth phase and a continuing growth phase. And so if you kind of look at the whole cycle, a lot of the risks, so things like compliance, security, scalability, availability, reliability, these things have been well worked out at this point to really support even the largest enterprise contact centers out there. And so, from that perspective, I'd say the issues have really been worked out, a lot of attention and a lot of bright minds that have solved those issues. I think the other thing is how you think about how you migrate and the seamless migration that can occur, let's say, from an on-premise to a cloud. We have countless examples, I'm sure, across all 3 companies, but at Five9, less than 2 weeks to get you live on contact center, fully, up, available, rocking, agents trained. And of course, the professional services necessary to customize that experience for exactly the CX experience that you want to provide. And so, the risks are low. The mechanisms for moving from premise to cloud are well understood. These are something that can be done in short time frames and done with proper scoping, so that if you have unique requirements or unique elements that need to be taken into account, they can be. So yeah, so is now the right time? I'd say, the market is already showing that. So absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was just to add to that, I love Mark's question. So Mark asked the question in the chat, what's the cost of doing nothing? Which is, right in the front of what we should be thinking about. And I think, Mark, it's right in step with this. And one thing I would say is, like the panel has said, differentiation and customer expectations. Customers are not waiting around, right? They're not just comparing their experience with you and your competition. They're comparing their experience across all the experiences they have. So that means Netflix, it means Amazon, it means everybody. And so that expectation is there, and that's not going to wait for us. So I think I love the experience economy and the focus on experience as a differentiator. And a quote from that I like is, time is the currency of value. Consumers see value either in time well spent or time well saved. That means if I reach out to you and I need help, you're going to give me an answer. So you've either, it's been valuable and given me my answer, and hopefully it's done both. It's done it efficiently and effectively where it saved me time and I can get back to my life too. One of the research projects we did, we had 2 data points, and we asked consumers about how they viewed service. And in 2021, 70% of the people that were surveyed said a company was only as good as its service. Now we've done that data point again, that number has leaped to 86%. So this isn't, in my mind, it's not optional. I think I'll turn it back to the guys, but I think this is a necessary. Every time we don't do this, we potentially lose ground competitively.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I would just kind of say, with the, pivoting back to Mark's question, there really is a cost to doing nothing, isn't there?
And I was going to add an example, just sort of a real example that we're starting to see. When you think about as you wrap up a call, and somebody needs to go through a call wrap-up time, and they're summarizing the call, the technologies now, you're able to, use generative AI to create beautiful summaries, and from there really lighten the load for an agent in that particular way. And so when you think about the average, 5-minute wrap-up time, that's now going to something like a 30 seconds, it gives the agent a bit of time to kind of find their center again, make sure that everything is wrapped up cleanly. And often, some of those technologies can write a better summary than somebody who's time compressed in that scenario. So if you think of reducing that time now by 50, 60, 70% on every wrap time, that is cost of labor savings that actually does go straight to the bottom line. Frankly, that means you can support more customer experience demand that's going to come online as well, with fewer agents that are obviously happier as a result. So, and I have to give a nod to the gentleman that said, does cloud make us more aerodynamic with our hair falling out? So with Owen and I are certainly affected by that, but I think Charlie and Tim were very lucky in that regard.
We're well balanced in that regard.
My Zoom filter
right.
seems to shave my hair off, but I'm moving around just to prove that I have some here.
Yes.
Great point, Les.
One other angle I wanted to provide here is the cost of kind of doing nothing. We've talked about, the importance of retaining customers, but also, talking about the importance of retaining your employees. And we all are wanting to attract and retain talent across all parts of our business, including the contact center. And I think this becomes even more relevant as tools get better, as we empower agents with, and customer-facing staff with more information. The need to have a flexible solution to so that you can be an employer of choice and have a customer-facing associates come in and feel like they actually have a say in the construct and the design of the integrations, and in some cases, even the user interface. It's just an interesting phenomenon that we're beginning to see as new, is that some companies are actually running focus groups of their customer-facing staff to say what's working, what's not working, what access to data are you missing that could really help in your day-to-day job. So that really changes the dynamic of the role and allows you, with cloud solutions to be flexible and design and respond to input from your staff, which makes the job that much more easier. So it can be viewed as an important point to attract and retain the best staff.
I love that, and listening to the employees is so important. I was at another event a while back, and they were talking about how, if you go and sit down with an agent, an unfiltered agent, and ask them about what's going on in the business, they can tell you more about what's happening with customers and where their real concerns are in 20 minutes than anybody in the C-suite, guarantee you, because they talk to them every single day, right? So, all right, last question for the panel before we have a couple questions coming in. We'll wrap up at the end with some of the questions, but what does great look like? What outcomes do you really want to achieve? Charlie?
Yeah, great question, Owen. And I did peek at the question. So I saw a question from Stuart that kind of plays right into this. So what does great look like? So Stuart asks, are we seeing major practical customer experience use case advancements for cloud versus the premise? So I think this fits right into what great looks like. So on premise, we were very boxed in, and sure, as a former technologist, I would say we could build anything, right? And that was true, but it was an enormous amount of effort. And so with unified data and unified orchestration, amazing use cases with incredible business value are able to be surfaced. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that it's a connected journey. It's a connected journey of understanding of who each user is and where they've been. And what I mean by that, it's not just about answering a call or a chat for a status on a ticket. It's actually understanding that as the person comes to the portal and proactively engaging with this customer to see if I can help, and then escalating to a human resource, hopefully in the channel that they're currently in, to be able to do that with context to guide them toward the right self-service. If that doesn't fulfill the need, then you escalate to a live agent. That orchestration of things across digital and voice was it was a dream for a lot of us on the prem. And so cloud designs have unified data, they leverage AI capabilities, and unify both automated and human resources. And like Tim said, enriched human resource engagement that just it would have taken us years and much resources, human and financial, to be able to achieve on-prem.
Yeah, the insights are in the data. And, now that the architectures are able to deposit that information in data lakes, and very extensive big data oriented projects, and then extracting that out through, analytics, visualizations, customized reporting, you just kind of go down the list. As each kind of person in the chain of command in running a great machine for CX experience is provided deeper insights to make better business decisions. I'd say that's one of the biggest game changers that we've really seen in the evolution from on-prem to cloud. And so I'd say the cloud is really more of the means to the end, but the end is having better business decisions at the end of the day to deliver a much better customer experience.
Yeah, 100%. And in my view, yeah, it's when companies start talking about the new metrics of success, of revenue growth, increase in sales conversions, NPS scores, instead of some of the more legacy metrics that we've heard over the years, handle times, how much time, spent in after call wrap up, post-call survey scores. I mean, still very relevant, but we as a marketer, in this space for many years, I've been writing customer stories all the time, and it's just been an interesting and fun trend to see customers, going from kind of talking about these legacy metrics to these new, revenue growth oriented metrics. And when that transition begins, that's a great sign of success, and that you're on the right.
Even feeding the demand gen funnel, right? Like the insights to understand where in that journey it's helping the demand generation from a lead to a conversion, for businesses that really model lead math and that funnel flow. So I agree 150% on that.
And Matt, to pile on, and Tim, to pile on to something you said, those traditional metrics like handle time. And we said, what are we trying to do? We want the lowest handle time possible. Completely blind to Matt, what you said. Did that generate more demand, right? Or what? Right. And so to be able to have the insights, the reporting, and even in real time to be able to understand those dynamics, that's transformational, because it's quite possible the handle time you want is not the one you're actually trying to optimize for today. So I love that, Tim, right? It's the metrics are different, but they're also interrelated.
Right. Boy, I could do a whole webinar on KPIs that matter, and more importantly, KPIs that don't matter anymore. But for another day. In the interest of time, we've had a number of questions come in here, and I want to get to those. So we're going to do a little bit of a lightning round and try to hit a couple of these. So first question is from Angela. And Matt, I think I'm going to throw this one to you. How can a business prepare for a cloud migration?
Yeah, well, it all starts with scoping. And so really getting to understand kind of your current capabilities and scope where you are today. And I think understanding now that you have a new tool set and new capabilities, where do you want to be tomorrow? And that plan is really key. That has to be discussed at pretty much all levels, engage with vendors of choice, might involve an RFI or an RFP process. But as you go through the evaluation, proof of concept, and you really have an understanding of where you want to go, at that point, then it's let's lay this out for how we start to move forward in the migration. So I'd say scoping and planning and discussing where you want to be is the real key, because that's where I think you really unlock the maximum that you can get from cloud.
Definitely a good place to start. Next question comes from Herbert, and Tim, I think we'll throw this one to you. How can a business optimize its cloud infrastructure after migration?
Yeah, so be prepared to iterate. After you've deployed the cloud, being able to respond, examining the data and analytics that we've been talking about, to iterate on, pressure test what sort of engagement methods and channels that you're offering. Be prepared to adjust them, add new ones, remove some channels that aren't performing, or iterate in terms of the types of tools that you're providing and integrations and data sources you're giving to agents. Perhaps even experiment with focus groups, which is a building phenomenon. Mm-hmm. I think these learnings and iterations where you consider it as a journey and not just a one and done destination is really important. And then, of course, automation. And as you examine the analytics and the types of calls and the call flows and that are coming in, where can you automate intelligently, either through kind of self-service, bots or other types of solutions, understanding where you can automate without compromising on satisfaction, and making sure that you have live agent support always backing up any self-service strategy you put in place.
Right. I do.
Oh, and I'll add to that too, is that I think it's an understanding of kind of Gen Y, Gen Z really appreciates self-service. They like the instant gratification. And so that is part of their persona, that the more you can automate and provide self-service to those types of customers, the happier they're going to be. So just want to pile on that comment.
All right. I'm gonna skip ahead on one of the questions here because it just came in and it's a great one. So from Les and Charlie, I guess you're going to be up for this one. How do you see conversational AI, and self-service chatbots further transitioning customer experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we've talked about the role AI has to play in customer experience and employee experience too, right? It's not just on the customer side. So there's a lot there, right? You think about agent assistance and having a helper bot on the desktop to listen to the conversation and surface knowledge. That's transformational for an employee experience, increasing confidence in their answer, confidence that the customer has, right? On the customer side, we all see it now, right? We see a lot of bots out there. Where I see things break down is that a lot of times the bot is uninformed and has no context. So I'm authenticated on a website, I reach out for help, and the bot asks me, and I'm navigating the website, let's say, and I'm actually, this is what I want. And the bot asks me, who are you and what do you want? And so it's not just the technology, it's how we enable those. And I often position, sometimes the worst thing you can do is actually self-serve. If there's a high value customer that has a need and you've been trying to connect with this person, why would you want to send them to self-service when you could guide them to the right human resource? It's that kind of orchestration that we see elements like conversational AI and self-service being a part of, but not necessarily always the focal point.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Charlie, I mean, we all know that the quality of output of any model is dependent on the quality of inputs. And I think that one of the new focus areas that companies are going to have with conversational AI and self-service chatbots and now generative AI is really tackling that data management challenge so that you can have a fighting chance of having quality inputs to whether it's a generative AI system or a chatbot system or self-service IVR, or even a live agent kind of real-time assist type of category. It's this concept of understanding and wrangling all the data that you have available and being able to activate it instead of having it be, buried in silos and not accessible.
Right. Yeah, and boy, I think we could go on all day on this. And we have a number of questions that unfortunately, due to time, we're not going to be able to get to. But we will follow up with you after this is over and look forward to that conversation. And, with the number of questions, perhaps next time the four of us could get together and just do a straightforward Q&A session and see what comes in. That may be a lot of fun. So, but anyway. That's all we have time for today. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your thoughts and insights today. That was really wonderful. And thank you to our audience for taking your valuable time to spend with us. For those of you who did attend today, you will be receiving complimentary white papers and ebooks from our panelists at the conclusion of this session as a thank you for your time. Also, you'll be receiving, if I could speak, you'll be receiving a survey that will have some downloadable content from Waterfield Tech as well. We'd really appreciate your feedback. This is the beginning of a series that we'd like to really tune to what interests you. And then remember to join us for our next live webinar on June 1st, where we'll continue this discussion with my colleague, Shanley Gebeshausen, Vice President of CX Consulting. He'll be taking the next step in this discussion and really talking about, once you've decided to go forward with your cloud migration and CX transformation, where do you start and how do you solve for the time and budget constraints? It'll be a lot of fun and really insightful, so don't miss it. Thank you all very much for your time and have a joyous day.